Hello folks, I've put together my ultimate guide to car leasing. This should answer absolutely all of your questions and perhaps give you some ideas on how to get the best value for your money when leasing a new car. Some of these hints and tips you've seen before and some of them are brand new in this video. And I'm going to start with this one, and it's the most commonly asked question, which is why should you lease a new car? Well, Warren Buffett said many years ago, you should lease depreciated assets and buy appreciating assets. So a house is something that generally goes up in value over time. A car is something that generally goes down in value over time. And that makes a great deal of sense. If we look at the average length of ownership of a fairly new car, you're looking at 2 to 3 years. Look at the depreciation that you expect to see during that time, and then look at the cost of the lease. If the lease is going to cost you less than the car's going to depreciate, then you're onto a bit of a winner in simple terms. Think of a car lease as a long-term rental of a vehicle, like a hire car that you have for 2 or 3 years. You have to pay an upfront payment, which is sometimes referred to as a deposit, and then you'll pay monthly payments for the duration of the period you've got the car. There's also an annual mileage limit on a car lease, and depending on how high or low you have that set will affect the cost of the lease. Now, the typical car lease, you're responsible for insuring the vehicle and for servicing and maintaining it unless you go for a fully maintained deal. More on that later. What happens to my deposit at the end of the lease? People use the word deposit, but actually it's an upfront payment. That means you don't get it back. It really is just another payment, so don't get confused by the language that's being used. Shop the deal, not the car. So let's say, for example, you've decided you want a Ford Focus, okay? Nothing wrong with the Focus, good car, nice drive. There you go, I want a Focus. So you're shopping around for deals on a Focus and you find that a Focus is about 300 quid a month, and that's quite a low spec one, and it's not a particularly exciting engine. And then you flick around a bit more, you might find a lease on a Golf GTI for similar money to that base Focus. I have seen people shopping for an Audi A3 before that have got an Audi A6 for 30 quid a month less. It's that daft at times, it really is. I cannot stress enough, but shop the deal and not the car. Where do you find all the best deals? Well, the best way to find them really is to go through a comparison site like the one linked in the video description and pinned as the top comment in this video. By using a comparison site, you can look at deals from a wide range of brokers with various different terms. Drilling down to find the best deal for you might mean playing around with annual mileages, the amount of your upfront payment, even the lease term. Find something that suits you and that works for you and make sure you get the best price. Can I put my personal plate onto a lease car and can I take it abroad? The answer is yes and yes. You just need permission from the lease company and a little bit of documentation which they can help you out with. Simple as that. Jim, how did you get such luscious hair? I got alopecia. Can I modify a lease car? Generally, no, you can't. It needs to stay completely stock, but you can always ask the question of the leasing company. Lots of people don't do things because they feel they can't, but they have never asked the question. 2 minutes on the phone will give you a surefire yes or no answer on most occasions. Can you part exchange if you lease a car? Well, generally speaking, no. There's absolutely no part exchange facility. But it's quite simple nowadays because you might want to wait for the day that your car is booked in for delivery from the leasing company. And at that time, perhaps a week in advance, put the car up on CarWow or Motorway or one of those similar car buying services, collect bids and get it taken away. Simple. Do you have to pay for maintenance on a lease car? Well, yes and no, really. You can get fully maintained deals, but you can also get deals where you're responsible for maintenance. On those fully maintained deals, they usually include your servicing and your tyres and bits and bobs like that. With the other ones, that's all left to you. So you pay for the servicing and any tyres as you go. Fully maintained deals can be a really, really good way of doing it. Sometimes they're dirt cheap, sometimes they're massively expensive. So really make sure it makes sense to you. Look at the cost of service in that vehicle over the 3 years or 2 years, however long you have it. Consider with your mileage, are you likely to need any tyres? And make an informed decision based on that. If you are interested in car leasing, you should be subscribed to my channel. It's completely free and I produce lots of car leasing content and loads of lease deals videos. So get subscribed now, it will take you a second and it helps me out. If my insurance company writes off my lease car, am I fully protected? Well, no, quite frankly. The lease company could still come after you for their loss of earnings on your lease deal. And of course, the insurance company may offer far less than the actual cost of replacing the car. So you should definitely consider gap insurance. What gap insurance does is makes up any shortfall. So if the lease company are asking for £40,000 to settle the cost of the lease, and your insurance company are offering to pay out £36,000, the gap insurer would step in and fill that £4,000 gap, meaning you're not left out of pocket. Now, the sponsors of today's video are ALA Insurance, who are one of the UK's leading providers of gap insurance. Go to ala.co.uk to find out more and to get yourself an instant quote. They do a special kind of gap insurance, which is called contract hire gap insurance, and that is for this personal car lease or a personal contract hire, as it's correctly known. Just go online, get a quote. It will take you less than 30 seconds and use the code JIM10 to save yourself 10% off the price of any of their products on the site. You may also wish to consider things like scratch and dent cover, alloy wheel and tyre cover. They're all available on the ALA website. And thanks to ALA for sponsoring this video. Who pays the vehicle excise duty, or road tax as lots of people still call it? Well, the leasing company does. However, if there's a change in the road tax or vehicle excise duty during your lease period, almost all lease contracts now have it written in that you have to pay it. And more recently, there seem to be some now that are saying that even if it's a change that we know about, so if the government's already announced that, for example, in April, vehicle excise duty is going to change, it'll be written into your contract that you're liable for it at the time it does. So be very careful with that. My old lease deal's coming to an end. How early do I need to start looking at the next one? Well, that depends really. If you're looking at something that's advertised as in stock, that doesn't always mean they've literally physically got the car ready to go. So usually there's a couple of week lead time on those, and it can be as much as 6 weeks, because it may be that the car's currently on a ship or has just arrived at port and it needs to be collected and prepared, etc. If you're looking to factory order, that can differ wildly between different manufacturers. Some will have a short lead time, maybe 10, 12 weeks, where others could be 6 months or even more. So really do a little bit of research, make a few calls beforehand and see realistically what that timeline should be. If there is a little overlap period, generally speaking, your existing lease company, assuming you're coming from a lease into a lease, generally speaking, your existing lease company will give you a small extension. But remember, if you get an extension, you might have to MOT the car if it gets over 3 years old, for example. So just something to bear in mind. My parents taught me to save up for a car, buy it and keep it on the road without any debt. Well, so did mine, and I think they were wrong. I've lost loads of money on used cars in the past, not just the difference between the purchase price and the sale price, but simply the cost of keeping them on the road. And the massive variable you've got, the repairs that could come along at any time and literally make the car worthless, or mean that you've got to plough lots of money into it. I've had to get into debt before to be able to keep my car on the road that I saved up for and purchase. The other thing is, if you give 100% of your money away on day one to pay for a car, you don't have anything in the bank accruing interest. You're not able to invest that anywhere. You can't play the stock market with it. You can't put it in an ISA. You can't do anything like that. If that big pot of money starts off on day one and just a little bit goes out of it each month, you're still earning money on it. That's something called an opportunity cost, and it's something that very few people factor in when they look at the cost of leasing a car. Am I a financial advisor? Should you listen to financial advice from me? No, I'm just a normal individual like you. I used to work in the financial services industry. I'm fairly canny with this kind of things, but I'm not a financial advisor. So don't take financial advice from me or anything I say as financial advice, because it's not. It's my opinion. I've been leasing cars for years, both for a business I worked for a long time and for myself and my wife personally. If you can think of a question, I've probably already asked it at some point, or I've found out the answer. Hence, I make these videos. And myself, lots of my family and friends have all ended up in nicer cars than we would normally have, and they've cost us less because we've looked at leasing them. Leasing sounds great, but I don't want a new car. Can I lease a used car? Well, yes, there are some companies that offer used car leasing, but I think it's a bit of a waste of time. Certainly at the time of recording this, I've never seen a used car lease price that seems to make sense, especially when you consider that one of the great advantages of leasing a new car is that you have manufacturer's warranty from day one. And take the manufacturer's warranty out of it, and you've got something that could cost you money and give you bills that you weren't expecting. I just don't think it's a great shout, if I'm being completely honest. But yes, there are companies out there that will lease you a used car, often for the same price as a brand new one, or sometimes even a bit more. So if you want to look into that, be my guest. I do PCP on my cars, and it's much better than leasing. Okay, so let me challenge that right from the off. Better for who? Better for you or for the car dealership? Because that's the really important question here. PCP is a personal contract purchase. That means you pay an upfront payment and then monthly payments. And at the end of the deal, if you want to keep the car, there's an agreed sort of value for the car and you can buy it. The difference with a PCH, a personal contract hire, or a car lease is that there's no optional payment at the end. Now, what lots of dealerships will do and lots of car finance providers will do is give you quite a large deposit or upfront payment to make the monthly payments look smaller, and then the balloon payment at the end for you to buy the car is huge. And what a lot of people don't realise is that with a PCP, you're generally financing the whole amount for the car, but you're only getting finance on a tiny amount because you've paid an upfront payment. You've got a big payment at the end if you want to keep it. So you're only getting finance for this bit, but you're paying interest on all of it. So that's the reason why lower monthly payments are sometimes a bit of a red herring. My suggestion to you is to always combine the monthly payments and the upfront amount, add it all together and see which one gives you the best number. Now, during the pandemic, there were a few people that were able to make money from their PCP car because it was a crazy time. Hopefully, we'll never see the likes of it again. But cars went up in value, and that just doesn't happen. I don't think it's happened before, and it hasn't happened since, apart from really rare special cars. So some people made money by having a PCP. But in my non-expert opinion, PCP is a wonderful thing for car dealerships and finance companies, and not a very good thing for consumers. My uncle's friend's cousin's dad, leased a car 20 years ago, and they charged him a lot of money when it went back. Well, Spain used to use pesetas. Cornflakes used to cost £1 a box. Times changed, folks. This is 2025. There are protections in place. There's a fair wear and tear guideline. And when a car does go back with damage, the charges now are usually nowhere near as scary as they used to be. I recently had a personal car leased through VW Financial Services via a broker that I found on a comparison site. And when the car went back, they actually sent me a scale of all the charges for any damage, if there were damage on the car. Now, our car did have some damage, and I was quoted locally over £700 to get that put right by a smart repairer, and even more than that by a local body shop. Now, VW Financial Services charged me £250. As an example, one alloy wheel was damaged. I was getting quotes all around my local area for between £70 and £85 to get that wheel refurbished. VW Financial Services at the time charged me £60 for it. Not bad. And don't forget, you've got that BVRLA guideline to look at before the inspection date. So you can see exactly what's expected of the car, exactly what they consider to be fair wear and tear, and what they consider to be damage outside of that fair wear and tear tag. So you've got plenty of time to get these things sorted. There's no need in this day and age for anyone to feel like they've been ripped off by a leasing company. This whole side of the business is very different in 2025 to even 2005. Can I buy the car at the end of my lease? Well, the answer to that is sometimes, usually, yes. You always have to request a price from the lease company. You can generally do that within the last 3 months of your car lease term, and they'll give you a price at which you can buy the car. It's not often a great price, and I don't think it's a good way to buy a car. So if you want to buy a car, I would strongly suggest you run all the numbers before you come up with that decision, because I don't think it makes great financial sense to buy a brand new car. It makes much more sense, in my opinion, to lease a brand new car at least 90% of the time. So before you do that, make sure you do all your sums and look at all the other options available to you. But yes, you can usually buy the car at the end of the lease if you choose to. Is leasing worth it? That all depends on you and your circumstances and the deal that you find. If you go and sign up for an awful lease deal, then no, probably it's not going to be worth it, and it's not going to give you value against some other options. But there are some cracking lease deals around at pretty much all times. And if you shop wisely, you can do really, really well with it. Do I have to have a good credit score to lease a car? Well, pretty much, yes. The very best lease deals go to the people with the best credit scores. If you watch my videos where I show you all the best lease deals that are available, they won't be available to you if you've got really poor credit score and credit history. And, a sensible person may actually look at improving their credit score and credit history before entering into new finance agreements. How do I insure a lease car? Well, it's quite simple. When you go through and get your quote, you have to note the registered owner and keeper as a leasing company, not as yourself. I've leased this car, but I don't want it anymore. My circumstances have changed. Can I get out of the deal? Now, generally speaking, you can often get out of a lease deal, but it will cost you a few quid. Sometimes you might need to be, say, even halfway into the deal's lifespan. But usually you're going to get charged at least half of the remaining monthly payments to get rid of it. So my advice to anyone signing up for a lease is make sure you're making a decision that you're going to stick to, and also keep a little bit of a rainy day fund, just in case the worst happens and your circumstances change. Can I get optional extras, and can I choose the paint colour on my car? Well, generally, yes, you can do both. The exception being cars that are currently in stock, because if there's a white car in stock, that car will remain white, even if you desire for that car to be red. So keep that in mind. But if you're factory ordering a car, you can spec anything you want as you would with any other new car. But be careful with this, because optional extras are basically worthless when it comes to the trade price of a car. So because of that, what the lease company does is splits the cost of those options over your lease period. So let's say you spend £3,500 on optional extras on the car that you order, and you're on a 3-year lease. Basically, your lease is going to cost you about 100 quid a month more because of those optional extras, because 100% of the cost of them you're going to pay in that leasing period. Now, if you find a car that's bog standard factory spec, even if it's a top of the range car, and you don't put any optional extras on it, that's where I feel you're always going to get the most value. Folks, I hope you found this video useful. As I said, some of it's old, some of it's new. I just wanted to get as much across in one video as possible, so everyone's got one point of reference that I can point them to with all their questions, because lots of these things come up time and time again, and they're all in videos, but all over the place and not particularly easy to find. So this has been my ultimate car leasing guide for 2025. I hope you found it useful. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. I'll see you soon. Huge thanks to all my channel members for your continued support. I really do appreciate it.